Okay, so Scream 5 is going to be coming out. And guess what? This isn't about racism or anything else. I want to do a movie, kind of a movie review, but I want to do the series of Scream. And I'm not going to really go through too much of it, just some cliff notes and stuff, and what I would like to see in Scream 5, pretty much. So, starting off, first of all, Wes Craven is a genius. He was a genius. He took the horror genre when it was down and out and pretty much dead, and he did a 180 with it. Picked up some things along the way, and then did another 180, so that when it did come back full circle to being Scream, that is, being the horror slasher that it became, it picked up that old dog picked up new tricks. And I think what he did was he noticed we're in 19, what is it, 90, 95, 96, I forget. But we're in the 90s now. We're not in the 80s. We're not in this time where people are stupid. People are more aware nowadays, and they were, of what the horror genre is, what the slasher genre is, and they don't want the same thing. Yeah, sure, of course, teenagers want to see naked girls running around boobies and then getting cut up, but adults didn't. Adults wanted to see something that didn't insult their intelligence, really. That made them think, but made them scared. And I think that's where Scream stands head and shoulders above a lot of, if not most of, horror movies. I mean, they did it first, I think, to me. They did it first, and they did it best. Um, what I mean by that is it took the dialogue from the 90s, it took the attitude of kids from the 90s, and it put it out on full display. Obviously, there weren't, I mean, if when you look at the movie, the cop is asking Billy, one of these suspected killers, hey, what are you doing with a cellular phone? Nowadays, you just be like, dude, what the hell? This is my phone. Like, what is wrong with you? What are you doing without a cell phone? Would be the question. Why don't you have a cell phone on you, son? But the thing is, when you look at it, it's not just as black and white, this movie, as Scream is, as, killer stalks, kills, stalks, kills, stalks, final girl. And is more like dialogue driven. It's more like, hey, look, we're a horror movie. Like the movie's waving at you and saying, hey, I'm a horror movie. Just want you guys to know that I know that I'm a horror movie, and I know that you guys know that I'm a horror movie, but I'm still gonna horror movie in a way that you like. And we get that Randy character that really helps bridge that gap by saying, look, there are certain rules. There are certain rules that one must abide by to, successfully survive a horror movie. Goes and proceeds to say these things, and old school people are like, yes, somebody said it, and it was, and it was great, and it was Craven, so he could do it. And then new school were like, really, you can say that? Holy crap! They know what they're doing. And the thing is, Randy, of course, he knows his character. He knows that he's in a situation with a killer, and he's talking about like a horror movie, but he doesn't. I don't think he knew. Like nobody thought, well, we're in a horror movie. It's just like normal people, just like normal, like you and me. If we were in a neighborhood where stuff like that were happening, it's just like, okay, so there's a killer running around. Which I think the kids were stupid, but then again, they're kids. Um, I think that the characters were very relatable. I think that Sydney, the not really popular girl in school who was just there, had the really good looking boyfriend that a lot of girls wanted, had the, I don't want to say Tatum was a slutty best friend, but she was a friend who definitely was, she had a shirt, bruh, and she had the nippliest nipples in the history of nippledom that ever nippled. I'd like to thank Cinema Sense for that analogy. And her boyfriend Stu was this goofy idiot, and her brother Dewey, Dewey, My brother Dewey was just this really, nice guy, kind of dumb, naive, kind of he was a cop. And then, yeah, you have this reporter who's a real bitch. But when you look at the cast of the movie was, for the most part, I don't want to say unknowns. They were known, but they weren't big stars. And then they became big stars. And I like that Wes Craven did that, because it wasn't just because when you use established stars, it's pretty much cliche by that time. But when they did use an established star, it was Drew Barrymore, and she died just like that. Like, she was almost billed as the star of the movie, and she didn't make it. Not even close to me. She was first to go. And I love that Scream did that. I think that it was an amazing movie. I think that the hardest part to believe in that movie was just how self-aware these kids were, was how smart this movie was too, without it didn't insult our intelligence, and it wasn't too smart for us to not be able to understand. We got it. And I was 15, 16 years old when I watched the movie, so I just knocked this out. But I was 15, 16 years old when I watched the movie, and I was like, oh, cool, I get it. It was really cool. The sequels were. I didn't like the sequels. I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I just didn't really. I mean, they're good for their purposes of being a sequel. They further the story, they have their own merits, they have their own good points and bad points, but I think that the quality declines to the point to where Scream 4, the biggest draw in that is, yeah, hot teenagers, killing each other or whatever. Just now, as far as Scream 5 is concerned, whether it's Courtney Cox has said that it's going to be a whole different, it's going to be its own thing, and I mean, I hope that it works. I mean, who knows? What I really wanted to do is get it right. And by getting it right, what I mean is, because Gail, Dewey, and Sydney, they didn't die in any of them, and it was just like the Trinity. You had the Father, the Daughter, and the Holy Dumbass, and it's like you don't want the same people to survive, but you also don't want them to die for the sake of, hey, we're fulfilling a fan wish of one of them dying for, you know, some emotional catharsis. If they're going to kill off one of the characters, they need to do it in a way that makes sense. Um, I think they also need to go beyond the whole issue of just the smart horror movie, too. I think they need to really, I don't want to say refurbish or package Scream itself, but I think they need to take what Wes wanted to do with it, keep the spirit alive, and then find a new way to tell that story, without deviating from it, and without deviating from what Wes wanted to do, and but at the same time without changing so much that it's unrecognizable, like so many horror movies have done. But I'm optimistic for the fifth installment. I hope that it does well. I'm gonna be waiting for it. I mean, horror movies this day and age really haven't been doing too well, especially remakes and reboots. But problem with remakes and reboots are not always the problem of the movie. It's the problem of the fans who just, I didn't want it. I really didn't want it. But here it is, and it's not as good as the original. Um, some people think it is, some people think it isn't. Like, I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the the remake, and with Jessica Biel. I love it. And the other day I watched Toby Hooper's and was like bored out of my mind. It just not that I hated the movie, it was just boring to me. I'm sure if I watched it in the 80s I would have liked it. But I think that horror fans need to, whenever they go to theaters and watch Scream 5, they need to look at it as its own movie if that's what's intended, and judge it based on what they see and not what they think that it should be. So that's my take on that. Let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe, and all of that good YouTube stuff. And I'll talk to y'all later. Mwah. Peace.